Shalom and welcome to another edition of Parsha Talk. I'm Rabbi Elliot Malamet from the Highland Park Conservative Temple Congregation Anshe Emet in Highland Park, New Jersey. Joining me, my good friends, Rabbi Barry Chesler, Solomon Shank Day School of Long Island, Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanovsky, Anshe Chesed in New York City. We are recording this on the seventh day of Hanukkah, seventh kindling, seventh light of Hanukkah. We're thinking about the 138 hostages still, and we're thinking about all of our brothers and sisters in Israel and all of the people that are going through this terrible time, this really, really challenging time. And yet the light of Hanukkah is shining and hopefully giving inspiration to people who are fighting and defending their homeland and their homes. And we are with them, and we are studying Torah as a way to kind of shape our thinking, as always, sharing it with you. We're so thankful that you are with us during these conversations. We're enjoying it, finding a lot of comfort in these conversations. We hope you are too. And this is Parasha Mikketz, which is an amazing parsha, second most amazing parsha in the Torah. Because Joseph is hauled out of his jail. He is, we're not going to go into Pharaoh's dreams. We know Pharaoh has, if you've seen the play, you know the dreams: 7 fat cows, 7 skinny cows, 7 fat stalks, 7 skinny stalks. Joseph is called out by the Sara Mashkim, who is convenient only for that one line where he says, "Et chata'ai ani maskir hayom." I remember what I was supposed to do. Ha ha. They haul Joseph up beautifully. They shave him down. They douse him. They whatever they do to get him presentable. Put on a new piece of clothing. That, of course, is significant. And he successfully interprets the dreams to the extent that Pharaoh is so enamored of Joseph that he offers him a job
on the spot.
on the spot. And it's not without political ramifications. But
we got to tell about Joseph's pitch for the job.
Yeah, have you ever seen anybody like me? Basically,
you know what you need?
You know what you need?
You need somebody who's like really, really sharp. Is there anybody here who fits that bill?
All right.
Since your magicians clearly don't.
I wanna kind of zero in on the moment that the brothers come down. So the famine is now well underway in the land of Canaan. Not the first time we've seen a famine in Canaan. This is, by my reckoning, the third time we see a famine. Abraham had a famine. Isaac had a famine. Don't forget that when Abraham had a famine, he went down to Egypt. Isaac had a famine. He did not go down to Egypt. And so here there's a famine in this. So there may be some kind of, priming here that they need to go down. And the brothers, are told by their father to go down. What are you looking at each other for? And that's how chapter 42 begins. And we could spend a lot of time thinking about it, but I want to take a very close look at the moment that the brothers see Joseph, and the moment that Joseph sees the brothers for the first time. And for those of you who are watching and listening, and this is chapter 42, verse 7. So it says, Vayar Yosef et Echav, Joseph sees his brothers, Vayakirem, he recognizes them, Vayitnaker alehem, he acted like a stranger to them, Vayidaber itam kashot, he speaks harshly to them, Vayomer alehem me'ayin batem, where have you come from, he says to them, Vayomru me'eretz Canaan, we have come from the land of Canaan, lishbor ochel. And we have come to buy food, or to acquire, to procure provisions. And we read this verse, and I want to read it with all the pathos and all the sense of tension that is there. I keep thinking like the music of it, which is, the chanting doesn't do it justice, which is, like all these verses, you kind of breeze through them, but there's some cinematography here, or there's some, Joseph recognizes them. And then the next word is vayitnaker. he acts like a stranger. And so I want to go inside the psyche here and ask, of all the possible things that he could have done, why does he do this? And the deeper question that I think we really need to deal with is, did Joseph learn anything? And did Joseph change? Was there any transformation? Joseph is in this scene probably about 37, 30, no, he's 38 years old, 39 years old here. He was 30 when he got hauled out of jail, 7 years of plenty. So this is about year 2 of the famine. So I'm giving him 38, 39. He's been out of Canaan for 21 years. Did he not change, or did he change?
Well,
And
according to Rashi, he grew a beard.
fine.
And, you mentioned the one verse. If we continue with verse 8, by Yakir Yosef et Achav vehem lo hikiruhu, and Joseph recognized his brothers, which seems to repeat the earlier verse. But I wonder if in Joseph's mind, he presented himself in a way that the brothers could have recognized him. And then we understand the last half of the verse, and they still did not recognize him. And it seems that Joseph is playing a game that we've seen before. It was a game first played by his father Yaakov with Esau, and then by his grandfather Lavan with Yaakov, where he's presenting a situation where he has all the cards in order to the best way we could to best them, or actually to humiliate them, to make them feel bad.
And, and why? Why does, we are the audience. Okay, I've sat through the play along, many, many times and going like, why are you doing this? And are you besting them? Are you trying to take advantage of them? Or are you trying to?
So I think that the problem for Yosef is that he has a family problem. On one hand, he is the firstborn of his mother. On the other hand, he's the 11th son. And he wants what he thinks is his due, and he cannot get it. And the dream that he had last week suggested that he could get it.
I don't think that's a play here. I mean, I'm going to say, of course, there's that element of it here, but I think there's something deeper going on. I think there's something related to identity and who he is.
Well, he does not see himself, right? The brothers say we're 12 brothers. One is not here and one is back home with dad. But Joseph doesn't see himself as one of the brothers.
No, exactly.
He sees them as the brothers, and he's a stranger. He's different.
He is being reminded that he's a Hebrew.
And he wants to belong.
I think, and that he's being confronted with the past is coming to, give him a postcard, not only a postcard, but.
Well, the other piece of it is that when he sees his brothers, I think he also recognizes he's not really an Egyptian and he never is going to be one.
Yeah. So the question then is, how far does he try to not be a Hebrew? How much does he want to assimilate to Egyptian culture?
I think you look at his firstborn son's name and the explanation for it.
There you go.
He names him Menashe because he forgot his trouble, his affliction, and the house of his father.
I want to know, did he give them
one of the great piece that Menashe's name does mean the Nashani Elohim, God made me forget all of that trouble. But there's a great little piece of rabbinic lore that the brothers are speaking to him through an interpreter.
Yeah.
And
this is about Melitz Benotam. The interpreter was between them, and there's a piece of rabbinic lore that the interpreter is Menashe. And so what that would mean would be that the child whose name means forgetting has been taught Hebrew, the language of connecting. Isn't that astonishing? So that's a kind of example. That's a rabbinic reading. It's not explicit in the Bible, but we do see so fully the ambivalence of Joseph because he has been tremendously abused. We can see from his reaction later on his great love and desire to be reconnected with his parents. But the dude was the viceroy of Egypt for 7 years of great wealth up the Mediterranean coast. It would have been a snap, and he has never tried to go. So the ambivalence and the sense of Joseph's own vulnerability towards these brothers who beat him up and threw him in the pit is just the Torah does a masterfully rich job of conveying that and so this that ambivalence, and so the vayitna ker alehem, that he acted like a stranger to them. He pretended to be, a stranger, not one of them. I mean, the points that you guys are making about he wants to be an Egyptian, he knows he can't be an Egyptian, he wants to feel like he's among those brothers, he can't manage to get that either. That is Joseph as an extremely conflicted character, certainly more than any other character in the Chumash. We get Joseph's, like the dense human emotional complication. Everybody else, we know what they do, we know a little bit about their virtues, a little bit about their faith, but Joseph, we get all of those things about, that we recognize as any human character in great fiction.
Well, I would put Moses up there in terms of identity. Moses, I mean, and of course Moses is, we could ask, in what way is Joseph like Moses? In what way is Joseph not like Moses? And Moses also has to wrestle with his own identity at the beginning of the story, where he feels connected to he has tremendous sympathy for his brothers who are being enslaved and being beaten up. But Joseph, I want to go to this question of so did he not experience anything over the 20 years? Did he not mature? Is the same narcissistic streak in him present here, or did he develop some kind of empathy? And is he doing this because he has to, because it's really difficult for him to deal with?
I'm going to offer a reading that, and I'm not sure that this is certainly not the one and only way to read it. I'm not sure that this is even correct, but I'm going to offer a reading that says the answer to that one is yes. Okay. I do think, as I just said, I do think that the emotional ambivalence and the accusation that they are spies come to see the nakedness of the land is just so super vivid about Joseph's own sense of vulnerability. But if I want to offer a reading that says that he has matured into his gifts, that at 17 years old, he got this lightning bolt of a dream, and he didn't even know how to it's like in Hogwarts or whatever, there's a kind of raggedness to how Harry uses his magic early on, and then he sort of learns to control it, and he learns to become, Dumbledore is not a baby. Dumbledore is like the magic master because he knows how to control the gift. And Harry at 17, he doesn't know how, Joseph at 17 doesn't know how to control the gift. He just tells everybody, by the way, I got this dream. I think it means that you're all my subservients. And by now at 39, he has learned that the point of the dream and the point of his tremendous gifts is to steer his brothers towards rescue. And that is, in fact, what happens. And he does, in fact, successfully. He'll say this at the end of the whole story. You guys planned out bad. God planned it for good. I figured out how to be an instrument in God's, providential journey here. And by the way, I said this before we started recording, we have in Judaism, in rabbinic Judaism, an idea that the essence of being a penitent is to be in the same situation but behave differently. So the brothers throw Joseph in the pit, sell him into slavery. When in this parasha, Joseph says, I'm going to test you guys if you are honest or not. I'm going to put one of you in jail. I'm going to put Shimon in jail. And if you're honest, come back with your younger brother and your father. Well, they go back to Canaan, they take all the food, and they wait until the food is gone. So Shimon has been left in jail for months and months and months. And Joseph has now put them in an opportunity to behave differently. They fail. But there's going to be a third opportunity at the end of this parsha when he threatens to put Benjamin in jail. And then next time at the beginning of the next parsha, they will come through. So if I want to say Joseph has become an excellent instrument of helping the brothers towards their destiny, he helps them with the food. He manages to give them a place in Egypt. He manages to fulfill the divine dreams, which in fact said that you would be the instrument of salvation. And he manages to leave them more together and more loving than they were in the past. So you can put all that stuff together.
So I would make two observations. First of all, it seems that Joseph cares a lot more about Benjamin than he does about Shimon. And I think that's
brother versus half.
An important part of his character. And also, when we get to the end of the story in a couple of weeks, I don't know that Joseph is really quite one of them as he wants to be. He has to comfort them in a sense after Jacob dies by telling them that this was all God's doing. But I don't know that vis-a-vis the brothers, he actually thought that. I tend to a darker reading of Joseph.
I want to give a more sympathetic reading of Joseph this year. I've been critical of Joseph in the past, but I feel an affinity. I feel sensitive to him. I feel and I guess I don't want to layer on the situation too thick, but we have witnessed in real time what it means to be in prison, or what it means to be a hostage, what it means to be stolen and brutalized. And while the text itself doesn't go into all those details, let's say that being cast into a pit naked and then being sold, that's pretty brutal. He's not roughed up, but then he gets to Egypt and he is successful as a servant, but he gets, depending on how you read the Potiphar story, he gets framed, or he ends up in jail again, and it's a horrible experience. And then he has encounters in jail, which elevate him to a certain extent, but he's still not free. And to be not free, he's got to spend a lot of time with himself, and he's got to go through things in his life. And one of the things that is bothering him, I think, is that he's alone, and that there's nobody looking for him, or there's nothing, and there's no news, and he doesn't know what's going on. And there is this deep desire to kind of turn around and leave everything behind, and to start new, which is implied by the names of his children. I want to start a new life. I want to have a new life. And here come the brothers and say, no, you don't get to start a new life. The past is going to come rushing towards you, and it's going to knock you. And in the moment that he's knocked, which is the first recognition, he doesn't know what to do, and he's recognizing something in himself, and he does what anyone would do in this situation, I think. Okay, or let's just say he does what he does, which is he builds a wall. Vayit naker is I am not going to deal with them honestly or forthrightly, because I'm not going to deal with things in myself honestly, and I'm going to protect myself from this pain, and I'm just going to wall it off, and I'm going to deal with them harshly and see what happens. I don't think he has it all worked out. In the past, I thought, this is the kernel of everything. This is the nucleus where everything, all the plans that he has are formulated in this moment. That may be too generous a reading. He changes his mind all the time. He puts them all in jail. Then he takes Shimon, whatever. I think I'm reading it as follows. He recognizes them. He decides out of defensiveness to his own vulnerability that he's going to wall himself off and be difficult with them. He challenges them and he recognizes them. And then he remembers the dream. Vayiskor. They don't get to the dreams till verse 9. So there's a bit of pause here. And it's the memory of the dreams that they come rushing back to him. I want to say the text says, Vayiskor Yosef et hachalamot. Joseph remembers the dreams because he's put them away. And for all we know, he hasn't had a dream since. And in this reading, the past is charging at him, and no wonder he breaks down. When they start talking, no wonder he will constantly be crying. There's just so much built up, and no wonder. I'm spoiler alert. Next week, he's gonna have a complete and total breakdown. No wonder. How can anybody sustain that? So I'm giving him a little bit of sympathy here because of what he's gone through.
So I'm struck by the verse that you didn't read, or the continuation of the verse, Vayiskor Yosef et Chalamot, which is Meraglim atem l'rod et ervat haaretz bata.
Translate.
That you are spies, and you have come to see the nakedness of the land. And that's, in polite company, we would call that a bald-faced lie. Because they came to get grain, not to see the nakedness of the land. Anyone could see the nakedness of the land. It's the second year of the famine. There are no crops in the ground. All the food is in the granaries. And what's interesting is that Joseph has this way of not telling the truth, or telling the truth in such a way that it's kind of disgusting. Right? Originally, in last week's Parsha, he brings the evil report of the children of Bilhah and Zilpah. And I think we can assume that it wasn't entirely true. And if it was entirely true, it was not entirely warranted to say out loud. And, Jeremy, I was struck by your comment that penitence depends on being in the same place and reacting differently. But Joseph doesn't do that. He continues to act the same way.
Well, once again, I could say it's not. I don't think this is decisive, but the meaning of the dreams was that I was here. That the meaning of the dreams, when he first tells them, is you're all bowing down to me, and the brothers, correctly interpret that 17-year-old's dream as I'm lording it over you. However, now the dream does look like, especially since, what were they doing? They were in the field making sheaves. The sheaves were bowing down. So it wasn't, it wasn't something random like, the birds all swoop down or something like that. It's the grain was the key motif of the dream. And now perhaps Joseph sees that the providential direction of the dream was that he was going to provide for them. And it may well be the case, and I think that, I said this before, that ervat haaretz, you've come to see the land in its nakedness, is just such a rich way of expressing this for a guy whose brothers ripped his clothes off and threw him in a pit. It's his nakedness that he feels vulnerable about. And there's one other thing that we didn't really talk about so much. We alluded to it a little bit before we started recording, is that Joseph has an Egyptian name and may be quite integrated into Egyptian culture. And perhaps one of the reasons he's doing this, he's got multiple balls in the air, and he cannot let everyone in Egypt know where it is that he came from. Or maybe that's not a factor. I don't know. But it's possible to read this, that he remembered the dream. And yes, what he says to them is an abusive falsehood. By the way, it was very funny. You said a bald-faced lie, but that's not how Rashi understands it. It was the opposite of bald-faced. When he was a 17-year-old kid, he left. The reason they don't recognize him is that when he was 17 years old, he left Canaan and he didn't have any facial hair. Now they're coming to see him in Egypt, and he's got a big, nice Hasidic beard on him, and so that's why they didn't recognize him. So it was a fuzzy face line, not a bald.
You would think the Strymer would have been the giveaway.
What a giveaway!
So I like your interpretation of Evrat Haaretz. I think there's a lot of connection there. Of course, there have been a couple of points where Joseph has been either naked or close to naked. When he's thrown into the pit, they take off his cloak and he's kind of naked. And when
Eshet Potiphar also takes off his clothes.
exactly, so there is that lights up for all of us who are reading. But I want to try this one out on you guys, which is, so Joseph is playing the role as an Egyptian, and they are not yet identifying themselves as Hebrews. They are, for all intents and purposes, Canaanites. Okay, and there's this thing going on in the Bible about Canaanites and the body and sexuality and nakedness, and I think the Bible has a kind of not so subtle polemic against those sexualized, hypersexualized Canaanites. And wouldn't there's a kind of like pornography here, which is you are pornographication. You are going to see the land in its nakedness. It's really a very harsh epithet, I think.
Yeah, because that's really quite a sharp observation, because the expression lirot erva or ligalot erva, to see someone's nakedness or to reveal someone's nakedness, is the Bible's typical euphemism for having prohibited sex.
Right.
And so to say that you have come, lirot et ervat haaretz, you come to see the land in its nakedness. I mean, are we to read perhaps that the whole story of stripping and throwing him in the pit was even worse than we thought?
You know what? Last week I said in shul, I have a midrashic license. I'm allowed to interpret it. And then someone said quietly, they should revoke it.
But I mean, the rabbis read that when Ham, Noah's son, quote unquote, the Noah's nakedness is revealed in the tent. The Talmudic reading is one of the proffered readings is that there is
Okay, so let's
terrible forbidden thing. So maybe Joseph is saying, not only did you tear my cloak and throw me in the pit, you might have done some even worse stuff to me.
Okay, fine. So let's go there and say that what he's saying to them is that your presence here is a violation of the Egyptian polity. Your presence here is a violation.
Okay. So, but then if that's all true what you say, then how should the brothers actually respond?
So by the way, I'm going to make it worse too, and then we'll get to answering how they might respond, because le'echol lechem, to quote unquote eat bread, is another biblical phrase that can sometimes have sexual connotations. So, for example, Joseph, when he's trying to send Mrs. Potiphar on her way, he says, listen, my master is so trusting to me. He's so good to me. I can't behave so badly to him. He doesn't. Joseph says two things. There are only two things that he does not watch me, that he does not entrust me with. One is the bread, and one is you. And those two things are associated. So bread there becomes a kind of euphemism for sexuality. And Moses, when he comes to Yitro says to the daughters, come invite him to sit and have bread, and he gives him Tzipporah, his daughter. So there too, giving bread can at sometimes ring in the ears of having a little bit of sexualized connotation. And here too, back last week with Parashat Vayeshev, they took him and they stripped him of the coat and they threw him in the pit. Vayeshvu le'echol lechem, and they sat to eat bread.
So the rebuttal to the charge, their otet dervat haaretz, to see that they reply, verse 10, Vayomer Elav, lo adoni, no master, my master, va'avadecha, your servants, bau lishbor ochel, to buy food. Lishbor, shim beit reish, It's not to they're trying to neutralize that claim. So if Joseph is saying you come here to violate the land, your presence here is a violation with all the sexual overtones that we're talking about, they're saying no, we're yeah, it's a pipe is a pipe. It's there's nothing. We just want to survive, okay? And then they go on, Kulanu b'nei ish echad nachnu, right? Then they kind of play a card, their ID card. We are all sons of one man. Kenim anachnu. Nice irony.
He
We
means
are honest,
Canaanim.
right? We're honest. Lo ayu avadecha meraglim. We're not spies. I think they're shaken. They're shaken by the charge. And so they say, we're family men. We're all brothers. We're not, we haven't, like, what are you talking about?
But it raises a red flag, because why come as 12? Right? Why not send 2 brothers to get the food? The image we have of 12 spies,
Well,
we're
they're
going to
10, right?
in Parashat Shalach.
They're 10 brothers here. They're not 12. They're 10 that are down.
But they say that, okay, you're right.
So this is why we have to read it very closely. Their first presentation, we're all sons of one man. Kenim anachnu, we're honest. And then he says, no, you're looking at the nakedness of the land. And then they say, this is the kind of the big reveal. Shneim asar avadecha achim anachnu b'nei ish echad. Okay, so let me translate. We are 12 servants, your brothers. Hard to read with punctuation, okay? We, Shneim Anasar Avadecha, your servants are 12. Achim Anachnu, we are brothers. B'nei Ish Echad, we are sons of one man. Be'eretz Canaan, in the land of Canaan. V'hinei hakaton et avinu hayom. And behold, the youngest one is with his father, is with our father today. And the other one is not here. And that is the kind of boom. That's the explosive verse, because they've not only shown their identity cards, they've shown the family dynamics. They've shown how they relate to their lost brother, and they've tipped their hand to what's going on now. And of course, last week I said, we could read the story of Joseph's abduction and sale as if Benjamin had not yet been born. So one way of reading this is that he's learning about Benjamin for the first time here, okay? This is the first time he knows anything of what's going on in the family. And yeah. So this is a ton of bricks on his head right now.
So the whole point is to come meet that full brother, because first of all, that when you Elliot talking about what's the cinematography, how do we stage this? I mean, the beautiful quality of this is they're saying something and they don't even know who they're speaking it to. We know about the dream. We know that when they say ve'echad einenu, one is no more, then you expect them to say, then one of them is dead, but they don't say that. They tell the truth, and he's just not here right now. Little do they know. And so then Joseph says, no, I don't believe you. You're total spies, and unless you prove it to me by bringing that younger brother, which, by the way, why would that prove anything? It wouldn't prove anything. They could have just, hopped up some guy from the shuk. But I'm going to test you, but you got to bring the younger brother, and tell you what, I'm going to send one of you back. I'm going to keep 9 of you here in jail. And then 3 days later, after they've been in jail for 3 days, he changes his mind and says, tell you what, I'm going to let one of you stay in jail. I'm going to send 9 of you back to go bring the younger brother. But this year, because we are talking about, because the resonance of this story with the hostages is just so terrible. Can you imagine what it would feel like? I mean, my heart is just a little bit open to the panic and anxiety and trauma of being in jail. So can you imagine he throws them in jail for 3 days and he doesn't have to? I mean, this is the thing that makes you want to tilt more towards Barry Chesler's reading, that he's just still being so mean.
Well, he ends up not keeping them there. He does mollify himself. He does say, "Et Elohim ani yareh." I have my bearings with me. I fear God, right? Um, Verse 18. I want to give him a lot of sympathy, and I want to try and go into his psyche. I'd love to, write the interview script. What were you thinking at this point, Joseph? Were you trying to be vindictive? Did you know what you were doing? Did you think it out? Did you did you see yourself at this point the way we in the audience see you, which is part of the larger plan? Is he aware that there's a larger plan at this point? And is this the Bible's theme, which is the larger plan happens, but yet each individual makes their choices along the way as part of that plan, regardless, and suffer a little bit. Look, how much of the story then revolves around Benjamin and brothers, and does he want to protect his brother? Does he want to look? His brother is at home alone with his father. This all goes back to Jacob. Why did he send him out in the first place? What? And how much anger would Joseph have towards his father? You're nodding.
Absolutely. You sent me. I read this one midrash the other week that when Jacob says, "I hear your brothers in Shechem, go find them," that Jacob would read this verse and tremble. That Jacob knows how guilty he was in so much misery. Eventuated upon him saying, go hang out with your brothers in Shechem. I mean, of course, that's the providential point of the story, and Breshit will end by saying, "I know you all planned it for bad, but God planned it for good," and so that's how it.
Now the cookie crumbles, but
that's how the cookie crumbles.
No, but it crumbles with such pain and such, there's so much emotion here. Look, when Joseph, I go back to that story where Jacob sends him out. Joseph, the family therapist here will say, "Well, talk to me about your grandfather." "Well, my grandfather had 2 sons, and one of them they sent off. And talk to me about your father." "Well, your father had, talking about your Abraham, your great grandfather. Abraham had 2 sons, Isaac and Ishmael, and they kicked out Ishmael." "Well, talk to me about your grandfather." "Well, my grandfather Isaac had 2 sons, Yaakov and Esav, and they sent out Esav." "Well, talk to me about your father." "My father had 11 sons and me, and then told me to go look at my brothers." So would I not deduce from being dispatched that my father kind of wants to get rid of me? And he doesn't, and it all falls apart. And that's why I feel for him, because he's filled with this tremendous animosity. He doesn't send a postcard, doesn't write, doesn't do anything to make contact. We get this question all the time, which is, here he is, he's second in command in Egypt, and you'd think that he'd make some contact with his father. It was
we know from the beginning of Deuteronomy that it's 11 days up the coast. If you just went,
that's it.
11 days up the coast. He's one of the most powerful people in the massive empire.
Right.
He could have gone. He hasn't gone. By the way, that is another motif that's between the lines, because if you just map out the days, that Terach lived a long time after Abraham.
Right.
So Abraham also has to leave, and we talked about this before. Jacob, all those years in Padan Aram, Isaac's still alive, and he also has to skip away.
Yeah, I see that we're running out of time. What when I look at the clock and I look at and think about the conversation and think about the story, and think about all the teaching that the three of us can do about this and have done about the story. There's no amount of time that can suffice for our discussion and for the ability to really part that. We only talked about 3 verses. We only talked about one scene. There's so much more going on in the Parsha. There's so much more to experience here. And of course, the Parsha ends on the cliffhanger, which is they frame Benjamin, with the silver goblet, the chalice that's, and Joseph says he gets to stay here. And that's when we reach the most tense moment, the most intense moment. But this is where our time is up. We've just scratched the surface, but we've enjoyed scratching the surface together.
Great.
Always, always. We want to wish everyone a good Shabbat. If you're watching this in the remainder of Hanukkah, thank you for watching during Hanukkah. Hope you have a happy last couple of days of Hanukkah. And we pray for the return of the hostages. We pray for quiet. We pray that all the soldiers in the IDF will be spared from harm, that there's some really difficult days now, and we hope that the days ahead will not be as difficult. May it be a Shabbat of peace for everyone. Shabbat Shalom, and we look forward to you on the next edition of Parasha Talk. Shabbat Shalom.